There's a bridge near where I grew up in Bumfuck, Tennessee, that is notorious for screaming at people at night. The screams aren't audible to the houses nearby, and supposedly you have to sit on the actual bridge to hear it at all, though I personally haven't tested it or anything. The common explanation is that it's a bobcat that lives under the bridge, but people have checked with dogs and such and never find signs of any. Well, some friends and myself had heard this story for years, all growing up, but never tested it. So one night, after a few beers, we got up the notion we're going to go test the thing. So 5 drunk guys piled into a beat-up car, and we drove down and parked on the bridge. This is 1:30 a.m. or so, and it's dead silent out. We sat there for a good 45 minutes, and nothing happened. We had the windows down and had started debating whether or not it was all bullshit when the scream happened. We had the lights off, and there was a moon so you could see pretty well, and there for sure wasn't anything outside the car. But it was fucking loud, and it sounded just like a woman with particularly powerful lungs, having her skin ripped off right outside the window on the rear passenger side that faced off the edge of the bridge. Now, I've heard bobcats in heat while hunting, and they do like a scream, scream, scream kind of thing. It's hard to describe, but they do it in little repeating bursts. This was a good 3-4 second extended scream at incredible volume. We tore out of there like a demon was chasing us. A couple of miles down the road, we finally stopped and actually processed what happened. My adrenaline was going so badly, and I was so scared I was just shaking uncontrollably. One of my friends had actually pissed himself, which I'd never seen anyone actually do. One friend immediately left the car and vomited. To give what I think was a good frame of reference to how actually terrifying this was, my friend whose car we were in wasn't even mad at the friend that pissed all over his seat. It was insane. To this day, I have no explanation for it. This happened about 8 or so years ago around Thanksgiving at my grandma's house. Everyone was asleep except for me. The only people in the house were my grandparents, my mom, brother, and I. No one else. I was on the computer because I couldn't sleep. I turned on a small TV to watch Adult Swim while I browsed the internet. At around 4:30, I started getting a chill up my spine, and I heard some children laugh. Distinctly, the voices of a little girl and boy. I know I'm all by myself, as far as being awake. So I turned to look at the TV, and it was in the middle of an Inuyasha fight sequence, so there's no way the laughter was coming from that. I checked the computer sound settings, and I had every possible output muted, so it wasn't that either. I sat there confused for a few moments while the giggles of the 2 children were playing in the background. I figured maybe the radio in the kitchen was on. It was digital, so maybe it just came on for some reason, or it had a timer. I got up, and I kid you not, as I was walking to the door, with each step, the laughter grew louder, from giggling to guffaws to hard laughter. Once the guffaws started, I started to hear a baby cry as well. What's going through my mind now is, what the fuck kind of radio show is this? And I just took 3 steps. Nowhere near the door, I took a few more steps, and the laughter turned hysterical, if not maniacal. The baby's cries turned to screams and wails, as if it were in pain. I was trembling and terrified with each step I took to the doorway, but my mind was on autopilot. I needed to get out of there and across the hall to my mom, who surely would help me and notice the weird sounds too. The last couple of steps increased the laughter and crying to an almost deafening decibel. It was like I was at a concert and the speakers were directly in my ears, blasting noise. It was painful and scared the shit out of me. I took all the courage I had, and as soon as I reached the doorway, I was going to sprint. I started to run, but then something shoved me. I felt these hands at my chest push me back into the room with enough force to throw me off balance. The crying and laughter stopped as soon as I was back in the room. This all happened within 20-30 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes. I was so scared I cried and slept in the tiny armchair before my grandma came into the room and made me sleep in her bed downstairs. In 7th grade, my friends and I went over to Mary's house, intent on playing with her mom's Ouija board that night. None of us had played with one before. Mary's mom was an extremely spiritual person who believed in energies, witchcraft, stuff like that. Before we used the board, Mary warned us that her mom would be really pissed if she found out that we were playing with it because Ouija boards can attract bad spirits into the home. With full knowledge of this, we decided to proceed anyway. This Ouija board was not like the average Ouija board you had ever seen. Along with the usual characteristics, the alphabet, yes, no, goodbye, there was an entire array of symbols and signs that were all arranged in a circle. This was some seriously intricate stuff. We started just goofing around and communicating with random spirits here until we finally met one that had us in tears the entire sleepless night. First, we asked the spirit if it was a man or a woman, to which he replied, man. Then we asked how he was killed, murder. That freaked us out only a little bit, but we were mostly excited. All of a sudden, before we even asked another question, the glass went to the eyeball symbol, then spelled out in, and went to the water symbol. We didn't have a clue what that meant. It wasn't too scary until the spirit spelled out SHOWER, and my best friend realized that the spirit was trying to get us to look into the shower. We froze. I've never been so scared in my entire life, especially sitting directly in front of the bathroom with the shower curtain all the way closed, facing in my direction. We all screamed and promised our friendships that we had not moved it ourselves. Very important promise. I felt like I was being watched, and my friends thought so too. It was only 4 of us, and I believe with all my heart that none of them had moved it because we were all too nervous to do anything. This is one my grandma used to tell about one of her aunts. They lived in Laos during the Secret War. Her aunt started talking with one of the American soldiers, and he started learning basic Hmong. After some time, though, he stopped showing up. The basic consensus was that he was dead, but she kept waiting for him. When things got really bad and the bombs started dropping, they fled to the caves for shelter. One night, as everyone is sleeping, she hears a familiar voice. It's the soldier. He's mumbling in very broken Hmong, "I'm back for you," over and over again. Her eyes are still closed until she feels something reach out and grab her shoulder and slowly move down to her hand. When it reached her hand, she said it wasn't a human hand at all, but like a large animal paw. She briefly opened her eyes to see a dark figure, clearly not human though, standing over her. Then, she heard her aunt get up. Something was said, but she couldn't make out what it was. The figure then left, and the aunt followed. This was still in the middle of the night, mind you. The aunt was never seen again. The story is that the dead soldier came back to take her with him, or something else imitated him in order to take her.